The Russian President Vladimir Putin announced an Easter truce in Ukraine war starting this evening that will last until midnight on Sunday. The time seemed to be running out for Ukraine after the American President Donald Trump threatened to pull the plug on the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. The Russian president announced a unilateral ceasefire based on humanitarian considerations, and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responded to the Easter truce proposed by the Russian President Vladimir Putin, accusing him of trying to play with human lives.
Based on humanitarian considerations, today starting from 1500 GMT to Monday, the Russian side announces an Easter ceasefire. I order a stop to all military activities for this period. We assume that the Ukrainian side will follow our example. However, our troops should be ready to repel possible ceasefire violations and provocations by the enemy, any aggressive actions.
Готовы к отражению возможных нарушений перемирия и провокаций со стороны противника.
Now, Russia's military chief of staff Valery Gerasimov says that troops have in fact retaken nearly 99% of the territory seized by Ukraine in the Kursk region in an incursion that was launched in August. Now, Russia claims that the main part of the Kursk territory is now liberated, and that's 1,260 square kilometers of the land. The Russian Defense Ministry said that its forces took control of the village of Oleshnya on the border with Ukraine. Now, Ukraine only holds a village of Gornol under its control. The Russian attacks have damaged farms in Ukraine's Odessa region and have also sparked fires in Sumy overnight. The Ukrainian emergency services have said that the fires have been contained, and footage provided by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine shows that the firefighters are tackling fires inside hay barns in the Odessa region. This as President Trump has warned Moscow and Kiev that Washington would actually take a pass on the truce talks. Now, Trump's comments have come hours after the Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that it is not Washington's war and the United States has other priorities to focus on.
Now, if for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that. And Marco is right in saying we want to see it end. Think of it. Every day, a lot of people are being killed as we talk about, as they play games.
As various U.S. emissaries have held talks looking for an end to the war, both Trump and his top officials have become more reserved about the prospects of a peace deal. Now, Trump said that negotiations are in fact coming to a head, but also adding that neither Russia nor Ukraine are playing him in his efforts to end the three-year-long war. Now, Washington, one of Ukraine's biggest backers, has provided $66.5 billion in terms of military assistance since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February in 2022. Meanwhile, the EU has given close to $155 billion in terms of financial assistance, humanitarian and refugee assistance to Ukraine. And I earlier spoke with retired Colonel Rich Outzen, who's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and also the Jamestown Foundation. Listen to what he had to say.
I think these are difficult negotiations because neither side thinks that it's been defeated. Each side, the Russians as the aggressors and Ukrainians as defenders, think that they have the capacity to keep fighting. And that means they're going to be very leery of giving major concessions, the sort that would lead to a breakthrough at the negotiating table. This is not unusual. If you look, even in very long wars, 2-3 years, until one side is exhausted, it's very unlikely that they're going to be at least willing to appear to make big concessions. That said, to the first part of your question about Europe, look, Europe has some big gaps in its defense industrial base, and they cannot replace everything that the United States has been providing Ukraine. And in my opinion, they are not going to get directly involved in the fighting. But can they provide enough money and enough weapons from various sources, some bought from the United States, some bought from countries like Turkey and others nearby, and some from domestic production, to keep Ukraine able to defend itself? That, I think, yes. I think even if the United States essentially washed its hands and said, we're not going to spend another $1 billion or $10 billion.
So as the stalemate continues in the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks, my colleague Eric Njoka tells us as to what are the big roadblocks in the talks.
Peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia remain stalled due to several unresolved issues. Let's now take a look at the sticking points. First up is territorial control. Russia is demanding recognition of its annexation of Crimea and control over occupied territories in eastern and southern Ukraine. But Ukraine is refusing to cede any territory, insisting on full sovereignty and territorial integrity. Next up is NATO membership. Now, Russia is insisting that Ukraine never joins NATO. Ukraine is seeking security guarantees and maintains the right to choose its own alliances. The other sticking point is the security guarantees. A ceasefire and talks. Ukraine calls for robust international security assurances, potentially involving a multinational peacekeeping force, but the US and Europe are divided. While US has not committed to military support, leading to concerns about the effectiveness of any guarantees. The European nations, on the other hand, are open to contributing forces. Russia is demanding sanctions relief, and it seeks lifting of Western sanctions as part of any peace agreement. But Ukraine opposes easing sanctions, viewing them as leverage to ensure Russian compliance. Military aid and demilitarization is another flashpoint between the two countries. Russia is demanding Ukraine to halt mobilization and reduce military capabilities. Ukraine is refusing to demilitarize and emphasizing the need to defend its sovereignty. US involvement and policy clarity is a crucial factor in determining truce. Trump administration has expressed frustration over stalled talks with President Trump, threatening to withdraw US efforts if progress is not made soon. But European allies are seeking consistent US engagement, fearing that a lack of clarity could undermine peace efforts. So those are the sticking points in the war between Russia and Ukraine.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.